Have you ever wondered why we wear what we wear? Why it sends certain signals? What's the history behind it? Small things like the buttons on our jackets. Why are they on the right side? Well, it turns out the buttons are on the right side because it's easier to reach over and pull out a sword. And it's, I know most of you guys aren't carrying swords nowadays, but it is something that I love a good bit of history. In today's video, gents, 10 items that might be in your wardrobe that have a strong military history. So the first menswear item with a strong military history is the wristwatch. Now what's interesting about the wristwatch is it's not the first watch. You had pocket watches. Pocket watches were a sign of wealth. If you could afford a pocket watch, especially when they had jewels and made of gold or made of silver, you were showing that you had money. Now a lot of these men with money were the first officers during the early part of the 1914, 1915, 1916 trench warfare. And these guys realized, hey, having a watch is something, it's not about showing wealth, it's just practical. They wanted something simple. They wanted something that worked well, something that was smaller that could just be attached to the wrist so they could time basically whenever they're going to have, they got to blow a whistle and call a charge. Being able to track time was seen as something very valuable, something very practical. And because of that, you started making a lot of these wristwatches. They enjoyed wearing them. So after the war, you saw them become all the rage. The pocket watch became less popular. All of a sudden, the wristwatch was in. The second menswear item with a strong military history I'm going to talk about is actually multiple items. We're talking about coats. And depending on what war, actually we saw different coats come out of each war and become more popular. I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments which jackets you know had a military history and I didn't cover in this video. But let's go to the Boer War. Initially, that's where we saw the trench coat. But it wasn't until World War I that the trench coat was basically the preferred coat of officers in the trenches, made by, I think it was Burberry, made some of the best ones, the initial ones. It was made with a particular material that made it a little bit water resistant, so a man could literally sleep in this jacket, stay somewhat warm, and they were a prized possession. So we look at the movie Casablanca. What is he wearing in some of those iconic scenes? A trench coat. Many of these men came out of that war keeping their trench coats, wanting to get more use out of them, just loving them. It's been an iconic piece ever since. The duffel coat as well. Out of World War II, we saw the duffel coat, a very warm, heavy coat, something that can still to this day actually be worn with suits. Also out of World War II, we saw the bomber jacket. Now the bomber jacket, other variations known as the tank jacket, this is where the jacket was cut shorter because a man needed to be able to get in and out of a tight spot. Imagine a guy going on a bombing run and wearing this jacket, or perhaps being in a tank. In any of these cases, he needs mobility, and at the same time, he's got to be able to stay warm, especially for those bombers up at a high altitude. The third item on this list is the combat boot. And from the combat boot, we've seen many variations. Initially, we saw the chukka come out of the desert boot. This was of a British design, popular during World War II. And now we see a wide range of companies that make them in suede or leathers or other variations. But it still is something, when you find them with a rubber sole, can actually be very comfortable and was made to be something to be able to wear in warmer weather, at the same time give support to the ankle. Now the laced dress boot, and this one right here made by Thursday Boots. I've talked about them before. I'll link to that video right over here. But this laced dress boot actually has a combat boot history. The rubber sole, the overall design, the stitching, the simplicity of it. Now what we would see in a true combat boot is actually small vents over here. Actually, it was, I think, in the Vietnam War when we saw a lot of these come about. They're going through a lot of water and they wanted basically for it to be able to come out of the boot. But the combat boot was designed to be able to take a beating, keep on going, and that's what's cool when you see it pop up in menswear. Item number 4 on this list, gentlemen, Aviator Sunglasses. Aviator Sunglasses, like the name implies, come out of the aviation industry. They were developed for pilots to protect them from the glare of the sun. So if you're on a bombing run, if you are in a dogfight, you don't want the glare of the sun to blind you, because that's the difference between life and death. These early pilots, they were in cockpits that did nothing to protect them from the harmful rays of the sun at higher altitudes. So at 25,000 feet, at 35,000 feet, you've really got to be able to protect your eyes. Otherwise, you could be almost blinded. Aviator sunglasses were designed, and the classic teardrop is there, so it fits perfectly on most men's faces. Aviators are still, to this day, used by many pilots for protection. Item number 5 on this list, the turtleneck sweater. Now, the turtleneck sweater was around well before World War II, but it was the Secret Service, the submariners, that made it popular, especially in the movies after World War II, where these guys, they're in a cold, cramped submarine. And what better uniform, what better outfit than a turtleneck sweater that's going to fit close to the body, have a tight knit weave so it's not going to grab onto a lot of things, keep them warm, and be something that they can wear again and again, get dirty, it's still going to look okay. So when we saw a number of the movies, it became popular in the 1950s and the 1960s, and to this day is a menswear classic. Item number 6, cargo pants. They became popular during World War II simply because they're practical. Think about it. With a regular pair of pants, you've got that high pocket, but you've got to lift your jacket up. If you had a cargo belt on or you had lots of things on here, it's a little bit hard to lift that up and reach in. Cargo pants were actually at the length of your hands. You could just reach down, grab extra ammunition, maybe food over on this side, and because of that, they're still in uniforms today. Now, in civilian wear, do I think that most people should be wearing cargo pants? I think they're a little bit overdone, but I do think that there are stylish ways to still wear cargo pants. Item number 7 on the list, the suit jacket. Yes, like the suit jacket I'm wearing right here. This has a storied military history. Go back and look at old dress uniforms, even look at modern day uniforms in the Marine Corps, in the US Army, in the United States Navy. You will recognize many of the features on a classic suit jacket. That's because the classic suit jacket came out of the military uniform. If you look at this right here, maybe put a few pockets right here, put some medals right here. This could be an epaulets right here. All of a sudden, you've got a military uniform. The Marine Corps, we actually used to have leather about 100, maybe 150 years ago right here, which would protect you from a not well-placed sword slash. If it was well-placed, you're probably going to lose your head. But the point being is that the clothing we wear today has a military history. Yes, even that suit. Item number 8, belts and suspenders. So it used to be that belts and suspenders weren't just for holding up your pants. They were actually there to provide support because you were armed. You were actually carrying a sword, as I kind of did at the beginning of the video. You saw that one. I was using this as a belt. The suspenders were there as well to be able to distribute the weight. If you look at old military uniforms, you'll notice that they actually have pouches on the suspenders and that it puts the weight over on the shoulders, which is much better than trying to hang it on the waist. So your suspenders and your belts have a military history. Menswear item number 9 with a strong military history, neckties and scarves. This is important for thousands of years. We've been able to identify friends versus foes based off the color they're wearing. Now, if you've got two opposing forces with similar colored uniforms, oftentimes they would add a dab of color so that somebody doesn't, mistakenly get shot. What we saw is during the Napoleonic Wars, the Croats are given credit for actually bringing this to Napoleon's attention. He loved it, and so the French adopted it. But if you go back farther, you look at the terracotta warriors buried over in China. Those guys had scarves, and they did use color to identify different military units. Item number 10 on this list, gentlemen, is the Cummerbund, and this is over in black tie. Now, this comes out of India via the British. What they saw were the Indian military guys wearing sashes. They liked the look, so they adopted the Cummerbund in their black tie evening wear. They brought this back over to England. A lot of guys liked it more than the waistcoat, so it's now at the same level and is basically the waist covering. It basically eliminates the line between the trousers and the dress shirt. All right, gents, now it's your turn. Let me know in the comments what I missed, what you would add. What has a strong military history? You notice I didn't talk about t-shirts. I didn't talk about khaki. I didn't talk about, a few other things. But I want you guys to go out there and do some research, see what you can find. Let me know in the comments, and if you've got any questions, would love to hear from you down there. Take care, gents. I'll see you in the next video.